Welcome to another episode of Leaders Learning from Leaders. Our guest today is Dr. Sherri Smith, the current Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Association of School Administrators. Prior to her role at PASA, Dr. Smith served as the Deputy Secretary of Elementary and Secondary Education for the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Previous to those roles, she spent 15 years as superintendent, leading the Lower Dauphin School District in Pennsylvania. Welcome, Sherri.
Good morning. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you with us. I'm wondering, as a starter, if you could give us a little bit of description about the mission and the goals of PASA, and then how does that fit into your role as executive director?
Sure, absolutely. So PASA, as we call it, Pennsylvania Association of School Administrators, is a nonprofit organization that's established to provide support and to help to cultivate school leaders across the Commonwealth. We target our executive leaders, particularly our superintendents and assistant superintendents, but recently we've expanded our footprint to central office administrators and some hopeful superintendents for the future when we go with our building administrators. So we're trying to cultivate those leaders and then sustain them in their job is our number one vision. So to be able to do that, our mission is to be able to, number one, advocate for quality education in Pennsylvania with our legislators. So a great part of our responsibilities is ensuring that our superintendents and leaders' voices are heard in Harrisburg in the decisions that they're making on public education. But then again, it's the support and the professional development that we provide to all of our school leaders across the Commonwealth by providing webinars, conferences, workshops specific to their needs, both on technical knowledge as well as vision and moving forward with innovation and creativity in our schools. And we communicate. We need to be able to communicate what's happening statewide, federally, in easy to read text for all of our superintendents across the state to keep them connected on what's happening. When you're a superintendent or a school leader, you're also have a responsibility at a state level for leading that mission and vision. So we need to keep them astute on what's happening across the Commonwealth and the country. And then finally, networking. Developing a statewide network of our superintendents and our school leaders so that they are working collectively together and supporting one another in their roles on a regular basis. So those are really the main targets of our mission tied to our vision. So what's my job as the executive director? To make that all happen, to make sure that we are providing the needed support and leadership and guidance for our superintendents and school leaders so that they can be successful in their positions in their districts.
For listeners from outside Pennsylvania, would you talk a little bit about the number of districts and superintendencies that you end up representing?
Yes. So we have 500 school districts in Pennsylvania. And so obviously at this point, most of them all have one superintendent. We do have a few districts now that have one superintendent that represents two districts. We have Pennsylvania is unique in that having 500 separate school districts makes it a real challenge because the needs are very unique to each of the school districts. Our folks in Pennsylvania are very used to me saying, if you know one district in Pennsylvania, you know one district in Pennsylvania. So it's a challenge to make sure that you're representing all of them as equitably as possible.
I was Pennsylvania born and educated, so I have a sense of that picture of how short distance you can drive and be into another district.
Yes,
with lots of differences from the one you just drove out of. Noting your history as a district superintendent, I'm wondering if you might describe some of the challenges that superintendents have faced that are, I'd say, constant? That they were there in your time, and they're still there, and you're dealing with them. And then if there's some that are more recent, dealing with change.
Absolutely. So, becoming a superintendent is a huge step, even from an assistant superintendent role. When I moved out of the assistant superintendent position to the superintendent role 20 years ago, it was a challenge to understand the position until you do it, right? I think it takes you 3 years to become astute in the position of a superintendency if you've not done it before. And so what's changed? Well, the one thing that is a constant is building that team of 10, working with the school board as a superintendent, and unifying into a team of 10 that provides positive leadership and guidance for your school district, I would say is the biggest challenge that hasn't changed as far as the fact that you need to do that. What's changed recently for our superintendents in that role has to do with the politicization of becoming a school board member. Unfortunately, we've seen throughout the pandemic, it has certainly increased. People wanting to get on the school board for singular reasons instead of what they should be joining the school board to do, which is taking care of the students and ensuring a quality and safe education for them. So that's one of the challenges I think that's new for a superintendent. Back in the day when I was there, you had a school board member that may have run because they want to get rid of the football coach, but it's now more things that are more driven by community's perceptions of public education. So that's definitely the biggest change that I see for superintendents, as well as to other types of challenges that they have that were not things that were first and foremost in my mind when I became a superintendent 20 years ago. And that is the mental health and aggression of our students. Schools are a microcosm of their communities. And we see community-wide the aggression and the mental health of our communities. And our students are replicating that in our schools. And that's a new challenge for our superintendents. We have escalated need for safety, security, counseling, and support for our students as we, provide them a safe and positive environment in education. And then thirdly is the teacher workforce shortage is this huge issue that our superintendents and school leaders are managing right now. And so trying to find quality individuals to step up, or enough individuals that you have the robust group of individuals or adults in your schools to make sure that your students are safe. And, with the turnover and burnout of our teachers because they're carrying so much of an additional workload based on some of the shortages, concerns of retaining those teachers. So they have a whole lot more pressures, I think, these days than we did long ago, but knowing that I think it's just an escalation of everything that we used to have to worry about, but definitely increased pressures.
As I was listening to you, I pondered that I'm sure years back, superintendents would have said there was a political impact on their job, but as I'm thinking about it today, it's almost like there's a national political impact on the local, the school board level. That strikes me that would be quite different.
Yeah, it's playing out at the local level. Back again when I was superintendent, you certainly had politics that from a federal or state level that you worked on, but it's not playing out in the school boards, which has made it uniquely different for our current folks.
I'm wondering if there are a couple of things that you might identify as opportunities for superintendents today that are that change the job from a positive approach, or an opportunity to do something today that maybe we weren't able to do looking back.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, my mindset has always been that a problem turns into an opportunity. So, as we've progressed past the pandemic, there are many opportunities, and this is something that at PASA is our vision and support for our superintendents and our school leaders across the Commonwealth is, we've opened the doors with greater communications with our legislators in the past year or two, and we've unified with our other professional organizations with a mindset of we really have an opportunity to change the way that we educate kids in our public education programs across the Commonwealth with innovative and creative ways of looking at educating. And we do that by sometimes releasing ourselves and pushing and promoting to get rid of some of the mandates and barriers at a state level that has captured or caught our schools into feeling they all need to operate the same K through 12, same amount of time, seat time, and those types of parameters of which we educate students. And we have the doors open right now where we can change that to be more creative and innovative based on the student needs instead of honoring seat time, instead of honoring all the mandates. And we need to. Kids are different today than they were 20 years ago. Let's face it, the use of technology, the integration of technology, and we learned a little bit how to use that during the pandemic when we were teaching virtually. We need to capture that and put it into our classrooms. So it changes the way that we need to be doing instruction in our schools. So I think there's all kinds of opportunities these days, and I'm excited about leading that and assisting them in moving that forward in Pennsylvania as well as nationally to better meet the needs of our current students.
I want to try a phrase that came to mind as I was listening to you there. Getting more focused on outcomes over procedures.
You got it.
Policy.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering from your experiences being at the state level Department of Education, insights that you gained there that you'd share with other superintendents. I'm kind of wondering what it would have been like if you had gone from the State Department back to a superintendency, if there's things you would have done differently because of what you learned at the State Department.
I learned a ton in my 4.5 years at the state. I seriously did. It was a great learning opportunity for me to know how things operate at a state. And again, to get a statewide perspective of what's happening in education across the great state of Pennsylvania. And but I would tell you that learning how to advocate differently for our schools is one of the biggest things I learned. Learning how to work with our legislators, to learning how to educate them on the impacts of the decisions that they make, I think are one of the biggest takeaways that I had at the state level. And truly, I think it has become a positive impact on me now as executive director of PASA, because I can share that knowledge with all of our superintendents on how to work with our local legislators in a more effective and friendly and collaborative manner to get what we need for our students. I think it used to be more of a controversial kind of relationship because of the impacts, and so instead of working with them and educating them. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. I think the other big takeaway was the fact that across the Commonwealth is that, again, that our districts are all so different and the needs are different. And that need for networking across the Commonwealth to share with one another the quality and innovative things that we're doing in each of our schools and supporting each other as superintendents. I think we really learned how to rely on each other better. And I think the third is that how important our communities are to our schools. School districts shouldn't work in isolation, thinking they're responsible for the K-12 environment, but that discussion on the mutual benefit between a district and their community, and how that community benefits from the school district that's in their community. And I think if you build stronger relationships from that community, you're going to be able to be much more effective at providing those programs for those students, and have a much more positive relationship with your community and your parents with the school district. So those are probably the biggest three takeaways I took away from the state.
I'm hearing something else as I'm listening to you, and I may be way oversimplifying this. So so feel free to push back on me. But as I was listening to you describe that, I'm almost running a picture in my mind of a superintendent dealing with the system, the way a teacher is dealing with the classroom. So the teacher has different kids with different needs. I can't do this year what I did last year. I've got limited resources. I got to plan around. The more that I can collaborate and cooperate with other educators, the more I build the parent voice in. Looking at a single student in my class, I'm almost hearing that multiplied back to a superintendent having to step out and see that as the system. And then I must say, as I'm hearing you, I'm almost hearing PASA stepping out to looking at that across the whole state.
Absolutely. I've always said that. So when you're a teacher, you have your students, right? And it doesn't change. Your level of leadership only changes who your students are, right? So when you're a principal, it's your staff that you're mainly responsible for and looking at their needs and supporting and developing them. Then you move to your central office and to the superintendent, and then it's your district. And then you're moving to, a state level, and it's all your district leaders and such. So it doesn't change your processes and systems. You need to have those. I'm a big systems and process person. It's really the only way that you can effectively change practices and what's going on. But it's who your audience is. It's who your students are as you move forward. So that's my mindset. I've always talked to my school leaders about that when I was a superintendent. You're always an educator. You're always teaching. It's just who your main focus is at that time.
And if I put this together correctly at PASA, you really have a large group to educate, because you've got the people within the schools that you're representing, but you've got the community, you've got the legislature. It really is a constant thinking communication flow. Information that can go out to you from them, but information coming into you from them that you use to build your program and your directions around.
Absolutely. I think one of my biggest priorities as an executive director is ensuring that I'm connecting folks with one another, connecting the superintendents and school leaders to our legislators, talking with our legislators and connecting them back to their superintendents. And let's not forgo the fact that also the administration, right? The Pennsylvania Department of Education. I've had a great 4 years. There's a great group of individuals working in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, and staying connected with them and helping them to understand what I'm seeing or hearing from our school leaders so they can more effectively lead at PDE, and helping them to get their voices back out to the schools. So really trying to, again, you can't, teaching and educating our kids these days is a challenge for all of us to do it effectively. And the only way that we're going to improve the way we do education is if we all work together. And the one thing I can tell you is that I don't care if you're talking to a legislator or the administration or superintendents, we're all passionate about our kids. We're all passionate about our children and wanting to make life better for them. So how do we do that in a positive and effective manner, working together instead of against each other to try to make it better for all of our children across the state?
You spoke a little bit earlier about the teacher shortage being an issue for superintendents. I'm wondering if you're seeing a similar picture with a leadership shortage or the need to be developing leaders, the current leaders thinking about the future leaders.
Yeah, it's so we always, as a superintendent, I always worried at night putting my head on the pillow about the safety of our kids. I think that's the one that, as executive director at PASA, that is what I worry about the most is a ripple effect. So as you have a teacher workforce shortage, you now have a leadership shortage because you have a smaller pool of folks that want to step into the role or are able to step into the role because we have such a shortage of teachers. So we worry about building level leaders and the shortage there, and that gets smaller as you move forward. Over the last few years, we've seen a lot of our newest superintendents stepping out of the role of like an elementary principal position into the superintendency role. And you look at all the experiences that they haven't had to step into that role. So we really need to surround that new superintendent with all the support and the mentoring and coaching that we can to help them to learn all the nuances that they haven't had the opportunity of time to learn in those jobs. And then cultivating in new superintendents and getting them there and then retaining them. Right. So it's a difficult position. And I'll say it again, if you don't have the gift of at least 3 years in a district to build those relationships and to learn all the technical knowledge that you need, you never get to be an effective leader as a superintendent before you're moving on. And think about what that does to our children. You never can move forward because till you get your feet underneath you and you would start leading change, you're changing to a new leader with a new mindset sometimes on how they're going to lead or what the innovations or the things that they want to put into place that are near and dear to their heart and their leadership. So retaining those leaders is critically important. We've got to keep them in their seats and enjoying their time as a superintendent. The sad part about it is that being a superintendent is the best job I've ever had. And I want them all to experience that, right? I had, 14 and a half great years of leading. And I want them all to walk away from their job as a superintendent proud of themselves and proud of their districts for what they were able to provide for students.
Well, as we close out, I'm wondering if there's some encouragement and maybe some cautions along with it that you'd offer up to people who are not only stepping into the superintendency new, but into the district level central office leadership roles. So
we need our best and we need our brightest. Our children are depending on us on that. And, people like to lead. There's a lot of leaders out there in all of us. And so you have an opportunity to step into a central role or as a superintendent and lead, truly lead your schools. So it should be something that I would hope a lot of folks are looking forward to doing and seek out to do. I think the challenge is if you don't have all the experiences, if you're called up to be a superintendent, is you really need to learn to lean on your fellow leaders, your superintendents that are next door, your superintendents across the state, your organizations that are there to support you, and not feel afraid to do that, because the job of a superintendent, we'll speak about that one, can be a very lonely position. And so you really need the networking and support of your fellow superintendents to help you to get through those challenges. It's amazing when you get them all together and they have an opportunity to network and talk. It may not take your problems away, but what you realize is you're not alone. And that's a good feeling. And then, problem solving and pushing forward, that there's no better feeling than when there was a problem that you had to overcome as a leader, that you're able to do that and make a positive change in this district. So I highly encourage everyone to step into those roles. We need you, and our children need you. And to be honest with you, society as a whole needs you for the future.
Very well said. Very well said. For listeners who might want to follow up with a question or a thought back to you, I'm wondering if there's a easiest way that folks might make contact with you.
Sure. Just email me at PASA. My email address is ssmith, SSMITH, at PASA, PASA-net.org.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time you've given us here today.
My pleasure. Thank you.